Welcome back. This is our second video for week 4, where we focus on families related to social class. So last week we began our two-part section on families and inequality. This week we will be focusing on social class and families and inequalities as they relate to families. We'll begin by looking at some basic concepts in the study of structural inequalities. So social stratification is another way of saying structural inequalities. Stratification is socially patterned. It happens over and over again. Inequality that is structured is inequality that is not based on biological, cultural, or lifestyle differences. These are inequalities for entire groups of people and not the individual. These are group-based inequalities. Systems of stratification lead to what we call social location, which are places within that system. These lead to differing rewards and opportunities depending on our place in the system. These differing rewards and opportunities lead to life chances, or the chance that we will have a good and fulfilling life, the life that we want. There are many systems of stratification. There are systems of stratification based on age, race, sexual orientation, gender, ability and disability, social class, etc. In this class, we focus on those that are most related to families, gender, which we did last time, race and ethnicity, which doesn't have as much of a focus in this particular class due to the short length of the class, and social class. Today we're going to be talking about social class. In the United States, our economic system of stratification is called a class system. A class system is a relatively open system. In sociology, we think of social class as a set of categories in which people share a common set of circumstances and perspectives. Financial circumstances are included, but it's not exclusively about money. Social classes highlight the shared positions between members of each category of class, and also the barriers between the groups that make it difficult to move in and out of these categories. The view of social classes as categories rather than that of individual people working on their own to achieve their goals emphasizes the sociological viewpoint of social groups relating to structural conditions rather than individuals dealing with their own personal struggles. Social mobility refers to movement within the class system. Moving up or down in social class is mainly what we're talking about, vertical social mobility. So social mobility with people moving up or down is often talked about in terms of intergenerational mobility, which is mobility or movement in social class by family members from one generation to the next. Systems of stratification are often referred to as either open systems or closed systems. Open systems are when there's few impediments to mobility, so it is possible to move up or down in social class. Closed systems are where mobility is uncommon and political and cultural norms and values dictate against it. People move up or down the class hierarchy. People do not move up or down the class hierarchy on the basis of desire, merit, and talent. Most societies lead towards one or the other, but are not perfectly fluid nor rigid. So most societies are not entirely open and not entirely closed. Our system of stratification, which is the class system, is mostly an open system of stratification. Some of the factors which lead to social mobility are social reproduction and social capital. Social capital is the access to resources one has by virtue of relationships and connections within a social network. So, for example, let's say you want to engage in social mobility by going to an elite university like Stanford. In other words, let's say you want to move up in social class, and you find a way to do that might be to go to a very good university and from there find a great job and then have the possibility of moving up in social class. Social capital may help you in this situation. If you or some member of your family knows someone who has influence on admissions decisions at Stanford, and this person will vouch for you, then you have a better chance of getting in there. Having less social capital like this, not knowing anybody in the admissions office, for instance, means you would have less of a chance of getting in. In this way, people who have more social capital through families and associates will end up making up a larger portion of the student body at Stanford overall, and so this system ends up reproducing the same demographic over and over again. This is one way that social classes are held together through families across generations. It's not just about how much money someone has. So it's not just if you can afford to go to Stanford, or even if you could buy your way into Stanford. It's not just about how much money that you have. It's also about groups of connected families who pass their wealth down generationally along with their connections and their lifestyle and ways of looking at the world. And in our example, the network of connections that you have according to your social capital. With these families, marriage is almost always within the same group, ensuring their wealth and social class standing is reproduced generationally. This happens not just through their wealth, but also due to their social capital. Social capital is not exclusive to members of the upper classes, but the amount of social capital is much greater with them and opens the door to many opportunities and resources. So I want to answer your second quiz question now. The concept of social capital was conceived of by the social thinker Pierre Bourdieu. So the first option. So just like wealth is reproduced generationally, so is poverty. Families characterized by economic instability focus on getting by. They are working so hard at sustaining their basic needs that the idea of social mobility, while attractive, seems out of reach. College attendance, the primary road to upward mobility between classes, is rare among poor families. Social capital is evident, but it is of the network of people with similar backgrounds. They might help to get jobs in the service sector or labor because those are the people that people that if you live in poverty, then you know other people in poverty, and they might be able to help you with the types of jobs that they have, often in the service sector or labor. But your social capital, your network of people that you know, will probably not be able to help you to get into a good college. So poverty is often reproduced as well among families, and it becomes challenging to climb out of this circumstance. But social mobility is not impossible. With all of that said, social mobility is actually pretty common. The class system in the U.S., like I said before, is a fairly open system, and so social mobility is common, especially upward mobility. having the amount of social mobility is although the amount of social mobility is usually not great. We move most commonly one social class, if at all. So, regarding mobility trends, mobility is common. It's more common than not. So, social mobility is common. The direction of social mobility is usually upwards rather than downwards. Most people who change social class usually move up in social class, according to statistics. But the range of mobility is not great. The distance people move up or down in class is usually small. So it's not very common for somebody to move from the lower class all the way up to the upper class. It's more common for someone from the lower class. Let me just grab that slide. It's more common for someone to move from the lower class to the working class, or from the working class to the lower middle class. And it also works that way with downward social mobility. It's not common for somebody to move down many classes. It's more common for them to move down one or maybe two social classes. Okay, that's it for this video. We'll move on to the next one. Keep your lecture quizzes open.